Thank you. Hi, everybody. Nice to see some of you again. Nice to meet some of you all. When we end, my contact information will come up on screen. Please feel free to take it. Annabella, I keep calling you Annabella. Can we change your name? Can you put an A at the end?
It's funny you say that because at one point I did petition to have my name changed to the spelling of LLE. Didn't go down with my family. So
That's how I pronounce it, Annabelle.
Annabelle. Yeah, it used to be like Brazoot. Are we recording on the Zoom? Were you able to hit yes on that? Beep boop.
It is Annabelle.
No, she's on mute.
I'm sorry, I'm here. I did hit yes, but I don't see anywhere on my screen. that
Wait.
says it's recording.
No, you got it. It's recorded on the. It will. Yeah, we're good. Okay, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to show you one slide, and this sort of typifies my personality trait, which is if I don't remember to record, we don't record. And so here we go. Okay, so today, you all can read the slide. We are talking about helping technically oriented IT leaders improve their job interview performance. I emphasize technically oriented. That is going to be defined by a personality assessment that I use in my practice, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that people in IT are technically oriented. So I'll be talking with a broad brush. I may say some things that not everyone agrees with for themselves, and that's okay. But that's how we'll go through this. So, because I know technically oriented people, I'd love to see all the cameras on. I'd love to see the mute buttons off because I want to hear from y'all. I don't care about background noise or anything. So I'm here with you for an hour or most of it. Jump in, ask questions. Now, I'm going to use slides to move the story along. And again, because I know technical people, sorry, it's how I convey information to tell the story that we're going through. And then at the end, I'm going to have my contact information. I'd love to hear from anybody and everybody. Okay, so here's what we're covering today. I'm going to do a quick poll to see who's here, kind of as icebreakers. I'm going to introduce myself. Natalie, are you trying to say something? No, not yet.
This was my background voice.
Okay. Not poll yet, Annabelle, when we get to that poll slide.
Oh,
Thank you. That's okay.
did it? Do it again.
No, we're good. So I'm going to introduce myself using my storytelling technique. It's one I'll share at the end. Anybody is free to adopt that. And then I'm going to start at 30,000 feet with some perspective on what I see happening in the IT industry. I'm going to talk about some research that I did with talent acquisition people when they're interviewing IT people and IT leaders, and specifically, that's going to set the table. I'm going to then walk through what we call the OAD Leadership Style Matrix. And OAD is the name of the personality assessment I use. And the Leadership Style Matrix just gives us a simplistic rubric to plot people in to have a conversation about it. Then I'm going to get into the practical guide of the interview stuff, and I'll be leveraging what we just learned about the OAD leadership. I've got two examples. One is a generic one. The other is a live person. Annabelle, is our live person on the call?
I believe she is.
Okay.
Stephanie?
Yeah, good. And then we're going to end with some quick storytelling structure. I'll say goodbye and get you out of here on time. Annabelle, to the polls.
All right. Whoever did the poll the first time, I apologize. Please redo it. Whoever didn't do the poll the first time, please do this.
I'm picking other.
We've got so far it's split. It's moving all the time. So 7% software development engineer.
Hang on. When it's done, call time, and then hit show results.
I wanted to do it live and then
They can't see it until you stop it, and then it shows it.
Full disclosure.
It's hard to tell we've practiced, isn't it?
yeah.
We just,
He is down really good at polls.
All right. Is everybody in?
We've got two people that haven't. I'm gonna give two
End
more
it.
seconds and see that.
Okay. Show it.
Share results.
Yeah. All right. 21 other. Well, one of them is me. 1 NA. 36 PMs. Great. Data management, cybersecurity, IT operations, and software. Great. Thank you. One more poll, please. You close this and do the other. Everyone, please pick something. I gave you an other if none of these work.
You should have given them an all of the above.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. I use the other.
I'm not an expert poller. I'm just trying to break the ice and get people involved. So, all right, close it up, Annabelle. All right. Improving interview skills, enhancing comms, understanding personality traits. That's a good one. Gaining self-awareness. Other. Great. All right, close it. Thank you, everybody. Really, I'm just trying to find a way to get everybody involved because this is a one-to-many. All right, so some text, forgive me, but I wanted to demonstrate how I have been taught to introduce myself because it's not always an easy way to start. So I try to make this be conversational. So I always start by trying to place myself in some big, important context and go from there. So talking with people like all of you on the phone, I would say something like, in my practice, I'm in and out of lots of different companies. I see less qualified or lower qualified candidates get hired due to their advanced storytelling skills. And that's a shame. I think that's better qualified people aren't getting the jobs that they should have, and companies aren't getting the people who have the best qualifications because interviewing skills is a skill. So what I do is I help IT leaders discover their unique and powerful personality traits. Then we use that knowledge to translate their traits into actionable communication styles, preferences, and blind spots. And that's the foundational work that we do. And then today, we apply that to the interview process as a way to win more roles. So that's my why and my now. How is what you say to the person you're talking to. So in an interview, what I wrote here doesn't really match, but in an interview, you would say something like, does your company value people who have values like mine or who share a common perspective or something like that? So you tell that story, and then it gives you a way to bounce it back to the person and have that conversation. Now, this is hard, right? Like what I do for a living is I sell personality assessment software. That's what I do. Some of you all are project managers, right? That's what you do. That is what you do. That's fine. That's not a narrative. And so it took me a while to train myself to get here. And it's a little of what I want to accomplish today. I hope that's helpful. All right, back to 30, 40, 50,000 square feet. I don't know if you all can read this. My PowerPoint skills aren't that good, but this is a typical C-level org chart. And if you see right here, our friend, the CTO, is sitting way out here on the edge of the periphery. Maybe it's not on purpose, but maybe it is. In the world that's coming up, I see this changing. I see, because of AI is not just what the technical people do. AI is going to drive business strategy going forward. And that, I believe, is going to push the IT world much closer to the business decision process. And so your non-technical colleagues are going to be counting on all of you all to be able to communicate some of these complex decisions that are being made and help make those decisions when they don't really understand the world the way you do. So what I see that is in this wrap up that AI is changing the role of IT in business. Now, I think this has been accelerating for a while, but the last year's acceleration, I think, has put it on a fast track. So what I'm suggesting is that functional IT leaders must transform into full stack business leaders. Now, this is what I meant by a broad brush. Many of you are. I don't mean to say that you're not, but just the point is that I've never worked in IT, but I suspect a lot of IT people spend a lot of time with IT people. And I think that's going to change. I think you're going to be spending a lot more time across different business units. So communication skills are going to be the way forward, and they're in top demand. Job descriptions going forward, I believe, are going to place more emphasis on communication skills and softer skills. And what a great way to demonstrate that in the interview process. So I'm going to do this real quick because it's probably stuff that all of you all know, but for my technically oriented people out there, I know you like data. This is more quant data. This is more qualitative data than quant data, but I just did some research and summed it up here. What I've learned is that some TA people have these concerns about IT leaders in the interview process. One is there can be an over-reliance on jargons, acronyms, and technical details. Now, this makes sense because what I said earlier, IT people may spend more time with other IT people who know that language, right? I was in marketing for much of my career. I bet marketing people talk in language that's hard for non-marketing people to understand.
They do.
They do? Okay. That also, sometimes they're not their authentic selves in conversations. And also, some of them, some who are more impatient than others, have poor active listening skills. So it's like they want to just jam the interviewer with all the stuff that they've done, and they're not listening to the conversation, right? It's kind of talking and waiting to talk. Please forgive this slide. There's a lot in it, but I really wanted to get it across. I've also learned that there's some concerns about some IT leaders, their social and interpersonal skills, right? And this kind of makes sense. They're typically more analytical and introverted, so that some of these leaders may not come across as personable or engaging. This can be challenging in roles that require strong leaderships and team building skills. So if you aren't coming across as social and personal, and the role is for a big team leader, that might not work. That might not work well for you in the interview process. Talking about presentation and engagement. So some IT leaders may find it challenging to keep a diverse audience engaged during interviews, right? You need to be able to adjust their approach to ensure message resonates with all interviewers. Again, the mixed audience world. And the last one is emotional intelligence. I certainly believe that IT leaders have emotional intelligence, but sometimes the empathy and some of those softer skills don't always come through. And I'm going to explain why some of that is true when we get in here. Anyway, I put this on the table just to say, here are some of the things that drove me to put this presentation together, because this is what I'm seeing in the market. Anybody want to say anything or comment? Is anything totally off base? Anybody recognize themselves in some of this?
Yeah, I'm totally in line with, your assessment of being authentic and being engaged or listening, and, equally communicating doesn't just mean listening. It's being able to verbalize, accurately, concisely. I'm with you 100% on that.
Cool. Thank you. Anyone else want to comment?
I also agree that you have to be passionate in the interview process, and you got to scout not only your technical skills but your business skills.
Good. Who was talking? I couldn't see them.
Oh, that's me. Sorry, I was multitasking. I'll put my thing on.
Oh, good.
Scott wasn't here when we read through the rules.
Oh, we didn't have the rules.
Joined a little bit later.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So let's go forward. Good. Okay. All right. So Again, I'm not a technical person, so I'm pretending to be one. So I had my mathematic background, but I thought of it this way. Here's a simple equation to help think about winning the interview process. So a lower quality candidate, but with a better story, greater than more qualified candidates with a weaker story. And that's just that's what's going to happen in the interview process. And so what I want to make sure is that anyone that I talk to, I can help understand their traits and then turn them into things to keep in mind as they interview. Theory of the case. This is my perspective. I've shared it with some people. I've not really had any pushback. And I'm going to explain this in a minute, but IT leaders are typically technically oriented. And by that, I mean in our personality assessment, which I'm going to explain in a second. And that's versus socially oriented. So more on that in a second. Technically oriented leaders tend to be less fluent or naturally adept communicators. One of the things I talk about a lot when I do personality assessment work is that gifts are not evenly distributed. So to be really good at one thing oftentimes means you have a deficiency in something else, right? I'm well aware of my gifts and my deficiencies. And so I paint this picture for you today to say the work that you do is hard, it's technical, it's deep. Some of that may mean that the communication styles that you have aren't as aligned with telling a story and a narrative as others. And some of that is because technically oriented people tend to prefer data to narrative. And I said, why is this important? Remember the formula for winning roles, but also for the bigger picture. Like with the changes that are roiling all the industries, being able to communicate to non-technical colleagues and such is only going to be more important in the future. Okay, let's get into it. So today, we're going to cover a 3-part process. So step 1 is discover your own personality traits. Well, I wasn't able to get everybody the assessment before this call, and it would take hours and hours to get everybody through it. So we're going to do it in 2 parts. We're going to do it a generic one to get the flow, and then Stephanie, hi Stephanie, has taken the assessment. We're going to do her live, and then she's going to comment on some of the stuff that she's learned on that. So we'll translate those into communication styles, preferences, and blind spots. And then at the end, we'll put that back together. I've got one slide on cheat codes for things to remember. Okay, so in my world, we discuss the personality traits by using a kind of a simple rubric we call the leadership style matrix. So in this process, we're going to learn about generalists and specialists, socially oriented and technically oriented, and also communication styles, preferences, and blind spots. So we call this split between generalists and specialists, we call that substance. It's who you are as a person. Then we call this split, being socially oriented and technically oriented, communication style or simply style. Now, so I am a socially oriented generalist. I'm in the builder quadrant. We like to say that builders are confident and persuasive, and that comes from our higher assertiveness as well as higher extroversion. And I'm going to explain some of these terms now. So generalists tend to be independent-minded people. They're comfortable with ambiguity. They tend to prefer flexible work environments. They can be venturesome risk takers, effective at delegation. I'm a generalist, and I'll tell you, we under stress, we delegate too soon. And we can be assertive. At a high level, generalists tend to care that work gets done, kind of checklisting. On the other side of that spectrum are our specialists. Now, please know, most people are some kind of mix of both of these and each side. Now, certainly there are some people that are on the extreme edges of it or the intense edges, but others are mixed. So just thinking of specialists, they tend to be structured. They prefer clarity, especially at work. They're likely doing skilled and accurate work. They're more cautious. They'll take risks, but they're going to go through a process to calculate the risks and try to get them in their favor. They're hands-on, and under stress, they'll delegate too late, causing a fire drill for someone else who has to pick it up. They tend to be compliant. Their reports are accurate and in on time, etc. Specialists tend to care how work gets done. Now, if I wasn't talking to a group of IT leaders, I would say, think of your tax accountant as specialists, right? Just very, very precise in how they do that, right? Now, socially oriented, again, on the spectrum, those folks like me tend to be open. They have a persuasive selling communication style. They're amiable, outgoing. They look forward to social engagements, especially at work. They're quick to trust, and they're optimistic. Now, in our world, the opposite of optimistic isn't pessimistic. Where's my reveal? It's skeptical, right? And so technically oriented people tend to be more analytical, straightforward, direct, sometimes a little reserved. To a specialist, to a socially oriented person like me, some of y'all come across as pretty intimidating, to be honest, right? And maybe you don't think you are, but to some of us, it feels like you are, especially with the technical knowledge you have, a little slower to trust and more skeptical about ideas. So people like me, I'll fall in love with an idea and go down a rabbit hole before I've had a chance to even, finish the brochure. More skeptical folks tend to take longer. They warm up to ideas. They ask like why and how and who are these people and did you read the contract and all the stuff that socially oriented people probably haven't done yet. So you can see how that differs. And then I'm just going to end this up, and I see some chat. So I point out here to say within. Oh, let me do this. Yeah, we're covering these folks today, right? And then last thing, and I'm going to take a couple of questions, is that in each of these quadrants, obviously there's 4, we have what we call 13 trait types. So there's 4 builders, 3 architects, 4 experts, and 2 facilitators. So these are just names. Obviously, not everyone here is an architect, not everyone is a builder, but they just tend to be how we group these folks together. When we go in, we're going to talk about a general architect, and then we're going to talk about an expert, and Stephanie is what we call a specialist. So let me stop for a second. I see there's some chats. Annabelle, is there anything in the chat that we want to talk about?
Yeah. Well,
Great.
the only thing in there, Peg, when you were talking about how people need to be good storytellers in the interview, she said, "Is this the other side of the hire for attitude, train for skills coin?"
That's a great question. One of the sayings we have in our software, we have a candidate selection tool, and one of the things we suggest is we say people are hired for knowledge, education, skills, and experience, and they're fired for fit and attitude. So our whole approach is move that fit and attitude up. Now, I don't mean it's a jerk finder, like jerks are jerks. And someone told me something the other day, NPO, nice people only. So we don't really screen for that, but different companies have different cultures, and you need to be able to fit into that culture to be successful. We've all heard of people who do great at company A, they move to company B as a rock star, and they're mediocre. Well, why? Did they get bad at their function? Probably not. Their motivational and workplace needs probably aren't being met anymore. So best to figure that out up front before you go forward. So.
And just to chime in on this, like, I feel like so many of you all that we've spoken with, like, you're on a little bit of a journey of figuring out, like, which companies to target, because there's so many companies and there's so many jobs. And I think knowing this about yourself, like knowing where you fit in here, will help you look for the right environment, look for the companies that have that environment too.
Agreed. Great. Okay. So let's get into the practical guide. First, we'll do architects generically, then we'll do Stephanie as an expert. I point these things out. So architects are direct with high confidence. The direct comes from being on the technical side. The high confidence comes from being a generalist. Experts, they're direct, so they're also on the left side, but then they're high knowledge that comes with being an expert is you want to have knowledge in the stuff that you're doing. Okay, please forgive I gotta move a couple things so I can read this the text here, but I want to go over some of these comments. So architects are technically oriented generalists. We covered that. So the headline is, from the trait summary perspective, is their analytical and problem solving skills. So they excel in problem solving, especially in areas with strong technical orientation. Their structured approach and self-confidence, again, that's from the generalist side, in technical matters are crucial in scenarios like coding interviews and technical assessments. So that's good. Oftentimes, architects can be cautious with new ideas. And I didn't want to write this, but I'll say it. Architects can also be cautious with anyone else's ideas. Architects often like their ideas best. So they prioritize proven solutions and methodologies, which can be advantageous in environments where stability and reliability are critical. So that's good. However, this trait may challenge them in dynamic interview settings that test adaptability and innovation. So I like to say, the traits giveth and the traits can taketh away. So understanding about that about yourself, I think, is the key here. Okay, now let's talk about communication style in summary. They are direct and focused. Everyone on the technical side is going to have that direct nature, So architects prefer structured and clear communication. Good. In an interview, this translates to concise, well-organized responses that highlight their analytical capabilities and technical expertise. This works well in the competency side of the equation. I've never interviewed for a technical job, but I assume there's always some kind of test or assessment. Can you do X, Y, or Z? Or can you explain X, Y, or Z? This works well. On the other hand, their preference for detailed, methodical explanations can impress the technical side, but they may need you to adjust for behavioral questions that require more flexibility in storytelling. So this is the yin and yang of this, right? So I think we can do this. At the bottom of your screen, there could be like a react thing where you just click on it. Anyone who maybe sees themselves as a architect, hit that button and make your, how do you do that? Give us the thumbs up. See what's happening for me? Show me my architects. Thank you, Farley. You're telling me there's only one architect here. Derek. You all being shy, or only a couple of architects? Okay. I'm going to go with not shy, but only a couple of architects. So let me move this. So here is I have so many screens open. Sorry, folks. You'd think I'd be a professional at this. Okay. So as we think about this for architects, I'm going to sum up some of this stuff, right? And you'll notice there's a lot of repetition in this because I'm trying to get across those points. So communication style tend to be direct, analytical, reserved, and structured. Preferences, especially in work environments, are problem solving. They like proven solutions. Again, some of that comes from not taking a lot of risks. They like technical discussions and autonomy. The key thing to remember about architects is that the generalists are independent, right? So if you find yourself as a generalist and you're in a corporate environment where it's super structured and you have to color in the lines the way the company wants, you may want to think about, is that going to be right for you? And then blind spots are things like resistance to unfamiliar ideas. So tell me if this resonates. Someone gives you an idea and the first thing you say is, well, the problem with that is, and that's not a conversation, right? That's like in tennis, you just smack the ball back. Or for Marie, I'll say in pickleball, you just smack the ball back and you're not really having a conversation, right? Overemphasis on details. In a technical interview, details are important when details are important. But oftentimes, You got to warm up. You've got to place the project you worked on in a certain strategic environment, et cetera, et cetera. Things about limited social engagement. My take on technically oriented people is after a meeting, they leave or they shut off their Zoom or their Teams, and the thought bubble in their head was, well, that could have been an email. And maybe they're right, but I think the natural disposition is to not get together with other people. And then some blind spots may also be rigidity. Now, the opposite of rigidity can be consistency. So where does consistency end and rigidity begin? That's going to be an individual basis. All right, here are your cheat codes. I'm realizing I got to push for time. So here's the things to emphasize. Obviously, your analytical and problem-solving skills, technical expertise, structured methodical approach, proven track record. I think that's going to come naturally. The areas I want you to think about is minimizing overemphasizing technical details, especially too soon. Don't come across as resistant to new ideas, even if your head is telling you, well, that will never work. You want to go with the flow a little bit. Avoid negative opinions of socially oriented events or initiatives, brainstorm, stuff like that. And don't disparage or underappreciate soft skills. Again, even if the thing is going off in your head, don't do it. Okay? That's the end of architects. Do any of the architects want to comment or chime in or anything? What do we have in chat, Annabelle?
We have Stephanie Farley said, this slide now doesn't look like me anymore. I was in an architect job title literally 10 years ago and then became an operational leader generalist. Guess we can be more than one depending on the time subject matter, which actually I think brings up a good point in that architect is a job title.
Yeah,
As
absolutely.
well. So I want to talk to the difference there.
Yeah. So in architects, in the quadrant, we have 3. We have developers, we have independent generalists, and we have entrepreneurs. And those are combinations of the different traits and styles. I bet you there's a ton of architects in the world that aren't in the architect quadrant. So there's a little bit of word and overlap on that. Thank you for that question. I appreciate it. Okay.
Then Derek said this is 100% me.
Good.
I just thought something this thought. Isn't part of the thing for an architect, and I didn't put myself and said I was an architect, but isn't I've been in a lot of situations, isn't negotiation part of being an architect too? You have to negotiate. You have to be able to spin it. You know what I mean? Why you think it's the better approach?
I think a bunch of architects like a good argument because they're in command of facts. And so negotiation may come with them. Here's what I say about architects. Many architects, I've done hundreds and hundreds of these readouts and stuff. And what's the phrase? Most architects don't have any F's what you care, right? And so they will just go through and win the point. And sometimes that's good, but it's also kind of zero sum. And it might be more of the game than actually getting to a business. One of the things I talk about is, and I'll try to do this quick and move on, is that in businesses, I see a lot of and have participated in a lot of unproductive conflict. Now, I'm a New Yorker. I'm fine with conflict, but I don't like unproductive conflict. And that tends to come at the context level, not the content level. So some marketing schlub like me opens up a meeting and plops a 40-slide PowerPoint on the table and says, this is what we're going to talk about. Our architects and our experts are going to be standing like this because that's not what they want to do. So now they're going through the slide and they're riled up because they don't want to do this. You're not even talking about the content. People are just upset about how it's being presented. So one of the things I coach in is that if you're going to do that in a meeting, send, Peg, I want to read that in a second. Send a spreadsheet the day or two before with the facts and the data that you use to build your your PowerPoint, you might not get them to agree with you, but you might at least have a conversation about the topic instead of being hung up on the messenger process. What is being said here? Arguing with an architect is like, yes, wrestle the pig. That's my favorite. Peg, you made my day, right? So that is true. And the art of communication is achieving your objective. Winning the argument, I don't think is an objective that is particularly valuable to go after, right? All right, let's get to Stephanie. Let's get real. So thank you, Stephanie, for participating in this. She is a technically oriented specialist, so she's in the expert quadrant, and confusingly enough, we call that a specialist. Let's look here. So because Stephanie took hers, I'm going to show you a little bit of how our assessment comes out. This could take a while, and we don't have a while, so I'm just going to tell you what it means. So everyone's assessment comes out in this box, and there are 4 trait words that we look at, and these are all called relative traits because where they fall in the number line is not as important as to where they fall relative to each other. So we have assertiveness, extroversion, patience, and detail orientation. Now, Stephanie is what we call a variation because her traits are stacked on top of each other. And all that means is she is a mix. Remember, I went through those early slides and said, here's generalist, here's specialist. She's going to be a mix of both of them. So even not only are all architects and experts not alike, even all specialists or technical specialists are not alike. So Stephanie has 3 dominant traits. Anything to the right of this little line here is dominant. Anything to the left is subordinate. So her dominant traits are assertiveness, patience, and detail orientation, right? And we talked about some of those things earlier. She has one subordinate trait, which is her extroversion. So she is naturally more of a technically oriented speaker. Would prefer not to be in a meeting if possible. Then we also do these 3, we call these trait modifiers. This VL is the score here. Average is 30. What VL is measuring is how adaptable is a person. So somebody with a higher score, the scale is 0 to 60, can stretch out of their traits longer and easier than somebody with a lower score. Stephanie can do that about as well as average. EC is a insight into decision-making process. We shorthand it as heart versus head. A lower score, like down here, is someone who makes their decisions with empathy and feeling. Somebody with a higher score, like Stephanie, is more logic-minded. Now, that doesn't mean they're always right, and it doesn't mean they're not empathetic people. They just see the facts of the logic of a situation and make their decision. And then CR tells us about some insight into how somebody finds a solution, say, at work. So somebody with a lower score is the type of person who's going to go to a manual, if they still write manuals anymore, or a training video. Somebody with a higher score is going to be comfortable in an ambiguous situation. So a head of business development at a growth stage startup probably needs to be pretty high on this scale because there is no playbook. And every meeting, every day, they're doing something differently. So that's who Stephanie is. I could do 30 minutes on this, so we won't. But Steph, do you want to just kind of give an overall perspective of taking the assessment and what you learned, or really anything?
First of all, it was super easy, right? You said that when you said preparation.
Yeah.
Going through a series of questions, and the interesting piece was it asks not only sort of where do you see yourself in these paired word groups, but also then where do you think your industry needs you to be, right? And so it's that interesting comparison between those two that I think is really valuable.
Definitely.
For me, when I went through this, I'm actually a little bit surprised about my traits because maybe I'm just growing as a person. I've been told before that I'm not very assertive. Maybe I'm trying to push that trait a little bit more for myself. So that was a good thing for me to see. The rest of them really didn't surprise me at all as to where I came into those. And just sometimes it's good to just get a reinforcement of who you think you are and how that relates to how you engage with people.
Great. Thank you for that. One thing I'll just say, especially when I go through a group and I'm doing readouts for everybody, I show a slide with a dartboard and 3 darts in the center, and then I clip forward and I put an X through that. The point of these assessments is not to be perfect, right? It's to give everybody a common experience, a common language, and a common framework to understand it themselves. So if there's one thing that it doesn't think is you, great. It's kind of a broader brush to understand yourself and how you might react with some others. Unless you're Derek, then it's spot on. So, okay, let's go through what we did for the generic one. So Stephanie is again detail oriented because the detail orientation tends to come with it, and methodical. She excels in environments that demand precision and a methodical approach. She is ideally suited for tasks that require careful planning and execution, ensuring thoroughness and reliability. When Stephanie starts a project, Stephanie finishes a project on time and on budget. That's just how she's wired to do it. She's also super conscientious, so her strong follow-through makes her a reliable candidate who can be trusted to complete tasks accurately on time. I suspect in work environments, she becomes somebody's functional go-to person because they know if she's doing it, they can go do some other fire drill and Stephanie's got it, right? And that's crucial for problem solving, right? I also suspect she doesn't get the little problems. She gets the big problems and has to undo the Gordian's knot. Okay, for communication style, precise and data-driven. Stephanie prefers detailed, data-driven communication, making her highly effective in technical discussions. Her ability to convey complex information accurately is an asset in roles that require precision and clarity. But she's also methodical and also reserved. So these two come together. Her communication approach is methodical and reserved, ensuring accuracy, but sometimes perceived as less engaging. Now, this is what comes up. When I did those 2 slides, a word I don't like to use often, but it kind of sums it up. Some people can think technically oriented people are aloof. Or they'll be in a meeting and they won't talk and someone will say, what do you think? You're like, I don't know what I think. You just brought this subject up. I'm thinking about it. They're loath to just start talking. People like me and Annabelle, and I think maybe even Marie, we'll tell you what we think right away, even if it's half-baked, right? Because we like to talk.
My husband gets so mad at me because I'll ask him a question and then I'll get annoyed because he hasn't answered. He's like, give me a minute.
Right, there you go. Anyway, so this style may need adjustment in dynamic social in social interactions like an interview. Okay, so this should be the rest of you. Anyone else? Anyone recognize themselves in this? Can you do your little your reactions? Stephanie, of course. Are we seeing others, Annabelle? I have my pictures closed.
I think Rob Strunk has put his thumb up.
Okay. Others? Okay, good. Okay, while we're here, let me see what's in the chat. Anything? Okay, yeah, get information first. Exactly. Okay, good. So, expert communication overview. The styles are detailed, precise, analytical, reserved. We saw all those words when I did the earlier slide. Their preferences are for structured environments where precision and accuracy is required, specialized tasks, and predictability. And then her blind spots can be over-focus on detail, reserved nature. I won't say she has a resistance to change, but the communication style may make the person she's talking to think that. So one of the things that I've learned, one of the workshops we do is called Leading Teams Through Change. And technically oriented people tend to, especially on the experts, they are precise and they do structured, exacting work. So if you ask them to change from here to here, they kind of want to know why, right? And so to an inexperienced manager, that may come across as resistance or even insubordination. It's not. It's a request to say, I need more information in order to do this thing that you want, and you've given me a memo. That's not enough, right? And so understanding that as a leader is really important. And then the blind spots, did we do that? Overfocus? Yeah, we did limits. Good.
Yeah.
Good. All right. I'm starting to do my fast talking New York guy things. I'm looking at the clock. So, Stephanie, things to emphasize: the left-hand side, detail orientation, conscientious, analytical skills, precise data-driven communication. I think by the time you're in an interview, everyone's going to know that about you because of the way you filled out the application, any kind of emails you wrote, etc. But in the conversation, minimize heavily detailed, deep dive answers, especially too soon. At some point, if somebody says, explain the agile thing you went through, I don't even know what I'm talking about. Okay, now you have permission to get into the details, but don't start there. And if you're talking to people who are socially oriented and you can kind of figure that out, they need a hook. They need a hook to care. So if you can find that hook, now there's an opening for your detail. Try to minimize any kind of resistance to rapid change in environments or stating that you have a preference for your solution. Here's how I do it. It's great to have that technical knowledge, but you don't want to come across as a kind of a know-it-all. Try not to express dislike for social interaction or group environments such as business meetings, conferences, brainstorms, etc. And also environmental or behavioral reluctance to adapt yourself, right? Being adaptive is really important in the world. We all saw the VL. So, Stephanie, you've got an average ability to do that, so you can stretch yourself a little bit. Great. So that's, I know I threw a lot of one-way information on everybody. I hope it's helpful. I'll ask if there's any questions, and if there aren't, I'll just do this intro thing, and then I'll put a wrap on it. So questions, comments, thoughts?
This is your time to ask a
People like me love positive feedback. Okay, cool.
You
So
gotta give them longer. You gotta give them longer. You gotta give us a bigger pause for this group. Somebody ask a question.
I'll ask a question.
go.
No, so everybody else asked that. Or
Stephanie as well, so but I can go by Farley to make it easy for today. I was just wondering, with the technical job seekers and also applying for technical positions, I think there's that balance of the technical words and jargon and proving your skills with also the kind of broader people and empathy, communication skills. And finding that right balance when there are so many kind of technical things that they're looking for is really
Definitely.
hard, especially when you're experienced and have a lot on your resume. So I love to see how to really master some of the storytelling intro with still that credibility of, I've got those technical skills too that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think some of that comes into your narrative and longer, sort of more thoughtful, imagine you're in a conversation, someone asks a question and your answer is yes or no or I don't know. Like, you're not in a conversation. So really what I'm trying to get across here is hone your ability to listen and be in a conversation. And I'm doing that in a way to just put some of the data on the table about what your personality traits may be like. And so we all remember Spinal Tap, right? It goes to 11. So when some of you all think you're being overly talkative, you're probably at a 4. You're probably at a 5, right? And so you can stretch that a little bit. Like I used to do training in public speaking, and I would say a sentence and then pause. And that, for some people, that pause was really hard. Then you'd ask the audience, how did it feel? They're like, I don't know, felt fine. So inside, the wheels are spinning. So I think for technically oriented people, you may want to go to 11 because your 11 is probably average 6 or 7, which is what the situation calls for. Does that make sense? Now, at some point, you're going to be talking to a CTO and you're going to be in the guts of it. let your freak flag fly, right? Get into it, right? But that's gonna come later, right? So okay. All right, I'm gonna do a wrap. So just recalling this, the why now how. I didn't really do the now part, but like at some point, I'm a project manager. Okay. Well, why are you a project manager? What drove you to this? What do you see in the world? What thing maybe is this company trying to do that matches your value and your hopes? Yes, every day you're doing, whatever project management does, but there's a bigger why for you. And if you can practice that and get that out, practice somebody saying, so what do you do? It's hard, right? Even for social oriented people like me, I practice this all the time. And so I think it's a good skill in general, but definitely for the interview side. So now, if we got crickets earlier, who wants to practice? Who wants to try a why now how on the group? Okay. I won't belabor it, but it's a good. Someone want.
Do you want to do yours?
And maybe Stephanie or Natalie, just because I would want somebody that's an expert or an architect to do this, not somebody who's on the other side that we didn't really talk about. So practice those skills that we just learned, maximize versus minimize, right? So
That's not me.
folks.
Natalie volunteered, Murray.
But I'm not the architect.
It's okay.
What do you think you are?
I think I'm very similar with John.
Okay. So we didn't kind of go over that, but go ahead, see what you do, and then that might be a good way to even look at those types of folks as well.
Yeah. So Natalie, what do you do?
Professional with more than 10 years experience in the healthcare industry. I stand departments from scratch, and I find ways to streamline and make work more efficient.
That's how. Why?
Why?
I see inefficiency in the health marketplace, and I think that's a shame because that takes money and time and attention away from patients. I'm in this world to try to make technology bring patients and medicine and solutions better for them. That's what drives me. I don't know if that's true, but that's an example of that world. That's yours. That's yours to keep. All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on. That's awesome. Natalie, follow up with me after. I'd be happy to practice it with you. I'm doing this real fast. I know most of you know this STAR method. I just added a bonus, which is star L for learning. If you learn something, especially about yourself in a project, that's a great way to end an answer, right? Just do that. You got this. IT world is changing. All of y'all are adaptable. Understand your traits. Be conscious of that. Go to 11 where you need to. It's probably not overdoing it. You'll become better leaders, better communicators, better interviewers. I think we did questions. I really wanted to get to this slide for you technical people. So if anybody wants to contact me, find my LinkedIn and or email by snapping this.